Meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. And today, of course, was a pretty nice day. As expected, we did get into the 60s, but if you've been watching Live Weather Impact for a few days now, you guys certainly know what's coming. The wedge setting up here in the Carolinas, heading into the first half of the weekend, which means big impacts if you were plans on Saturday. So what's happening right now? Well, areas of cloud cover moving in once again. And if you've been outside at all today, you probably noticed that it was pretty nice out earlier today, with clouds really starting to move in as the afternoon progressed. Temperatures, of course, again, getting into the 60s before now we're starting to see a small gradual decrease, and then rain starting to move in overnight across the Charlotte area. Now, the Duke's Mayo Bowl, of course, is tonight here in the Queen City, going on at Bank of America Stadium with a kickoff at 8 o'clock. Not anticipating any rain for the game. However, we will be watching a very small chance for some isolated patchy drizzle ahead of the main event. Areas of drizzle oftentimes are below the radar beam, which is why they're harder to see. And as we know, they're tiny little water droplets. So sometimes the reflectivity is just not possible. However, we know that with these wedge setups, drizzle is very common, especially if you were out at the Panthers game this past weekend. It was drizzling, and then eventually we did see some rain, and then it kind of went back to that same foggy, drizzly conditions. Temperatures, of course, in the 50s for the majority of the game, because the temperatures overnight will stay pretty warm thanks to the cloud cover. Now, to simplify the cloud cover talk that we give, right, about the lows, we always say that clouds act like a blanket, keeping things mild. But the reason why this is the case is because they block outgoing solar radiation. So think about a normal day where you see a big warm up because the sun is heating up the ground, which eventually heats up the air. And then at night, winds settle and we reflect that radiation back into the atmosphere, right? Goes back up, all the way up into the troposphere. However, if there's clouds, that blockage can't happen, right? Similar to a temperature inversion when we see really loud thunder or really loud fireworks and the smoke lingers overnight. So similar blocking mechanism to those things. So weather impacts heading into Saturday morning. Again, we're looking at widespread rain, areas of slick roads once the rain event is over. And of course, we know chilly and wet. I mean, there's not really much more to say than it's not going to be a pleasant first Saturday of 2026, but it can only go up from here, right? Here's a widespread view of satellite and radar. What you're seeing right now is areas of light rain falling from the clouds that's trying to saturate the atmosphere in order for it to reach the ground. Still struggling as of right now, but again, something we'll be watching over the next few hours. Here's 11 p.m. So that, again, this is tonight. Not seeing a lot of widespread rain yet. However, we will likely be watching a little bit of patchy drizzle. Here's 5 a.m. where I think the majority of the heavy rain is going to happen, if any heavy rain at all, is those early morning hours while a lot of us are still at home in bed, myself included, since I work normally until midnight on Fridays. Areas of light rain still lingering through 11 o'clock and then lunchtime, but you can clearly see that there's a drop off there in moisture activity with finally some clearing of the clouds, but unfortunately that won't be until after the sun sets. And really hoping for this big, easy brush off kind of the clouds. Oftentimes the wedge will linger for not just one day, but typically a few, but pretty good confidence that the gusty winds and winds kind of picking up on Sunday will allow for that wedge to break pretty fast. Again, if we see any changes in that forecast, we'll certainly let you know. It is a widespread chance for rain, but not necessarily a high chance for accumulation. If you look at those totals, I'm going to go back just a second. There you go. You can very clearly see 1/4 of an inch at a maximum. So again, it's not a lot total wise. However, it is going to be widespread at times. Again, mostly Saturday morning. Now, we can't look at a football forecast here closer to home without talking about what's going to be happening in Tampa on Saturday. Of course, Raymond James Stadium. The Panthers are taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Temperatures pretty typical for January in Georgia, or January in Florida, that is. I was thinking in my brain about the first year we moved to Florida from Georgia. My dad always talked about how much he liked Christmas in the 70s, and I would complain about how it was too warm. But here we are. January in Florida, 70s again, pretty typical. More clouds for them as well, because part of the same storm system we're going to be dealing with, they will also see areas of rain. So if you are flying down to watch the Panthers take on the Bucks, make sure you have some way to stay dry after the game is over. Although again, they're not seeing the same impacts that we are, right? Not a wedge the same way, of course, that we get in the Carolinas to Florida. They're just going to be cloudy, 70s, and then the rain moves in by the afternoon. So let's look at the long range forecast. We got a lot to talk about here, a lot of big changes. So tomorrow, again, we know that it's going to rain early. We know that the wedge is going to set us up for a pretty cloudy day, which means temperatures won't move much. I think maximum 48 degrees to 44, kind of lingering off and on throughout the day. A lot cooler, a lot drier Sunday, Monday, with chillier starts to the day. And then we see a pretty big warm up by the middle part of next week. In fact, the long range outlook is trending much, much warmer for the second week and third week of January as of right now. As Tim and I, of course, always talk about here on Live Weather Impact, you can't look at a very detailed forecast more than about 5 days out. However, we do look at long-term trends, right? We're trending toward warmth, trending toward cold, and as of right now, we're certainly trending toward the warmth. But if you look at the 10-day forecast, I'll show you this briefly before we go to break. Eventually, by the middle part of the following week, so the third week of January, we will be watching probably a trend closer to normal, but it doesn't necessarily look Arctic at this point.